E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia? E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia?
La civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buongiorno e benvenuti al meeting per l'amicizia fra.
Good morning and welcome to the Rimini meeting for friendship among people. This meeting is entitled Who Are You? The Challenge of Jerusalem. It's going to talk about both the text by Emmanuel Schmitt and the performance Who Are You? That has been taken from this text. We have today with us Ettore Bassi, who is an actor in this play. And we have Lorenzo Fazzini, who is in charge of the publishing house, Vatican, and the creator of this provocative idea. And then Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt, great writer. Apologies. And then we also have Otello Cenci, who is the director of this play. So everything is done here among us. This is going to be a nice talk among friends. So our wish today is to get to know each other better. Plus, among us, we have Mirna Cassis, Matteo, Thomas, and Filippo, who are the musical interpreters of the play. This is a play that we presented yesterday at the Teatro Galli in Rimini, and it is going to be performed this evening as well, again at Teatro Galli. So like I said, this is going to be a talk to get to know each other better and to understand what kind of pathway we went through that has led us up until this stage. So there is a first question I'd like to ask to those who started this pathway. This is Lorenzo Fazzini. Lorenzo Fazzini was the author of the first telephone call that basically triggered the whole idea. He decided to call one of the most important European authors, Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt, and proposed him a journey in Jerusalem, in the Jerusalem land. So my question to you is, how did this idea come to place, and why, Eric? The real question would have been, why haven't you done this earlier? Why didn't you decide to do this earlier? Fact is that for 3 years, I've been working as a manager of the publishing house Vaticana. And actually, the Pope always invites us to do one thing, that is to say, to take a risk, to take risks. And so I said to myself, why don't I take a risk? I should take a risk. So I had an exchange with Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt's publisher in Italy. He's the same publisher as Elena Ferrante. So I met this publisher, the publisher of Edizioni O, who have been publishing the works of Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt for 25 years, and I asked them the following question. What if we asked Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt to go to the Holy Land? And then later on I'll tell you why we opted for Schmitt. I think that even Elena Ferrante would have been a nice try. So the publisher basically looked at me in the eyes, straight in the eyes, and said, well, Lorenzo, today's my birthday. You didn't know that, but you made me a wonderful present. So go away and call Schmitt. So I did that. Up until that moment, we had rarely met. He had met me as a humble journalist, and I had met him as a major, great writer. And I explained my idea to him. He stayed silent for a while. And then he said, well, maybe this is the right time. I've never been there. But if you ask me to go there, well, that means that this might be the right moment to go there. Why have I addressed? Why have I approached this author? Because at the very end, there is another book by Schmitt, which is the Gospel in Pilato's words. So we have here lots of people. If most of you have not yet read it, I think that you will have read it by the end of the day. That's a masterpiece, I tell you. In that work, Schmitt basically thinks about the fact that the cause has disappeared. So they basically bother Pilato because the cause died. So you have this gospel. So, of course, it had to be Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt. And so I discovered that an author who had written that book had never been in the places where Pilato had lived. So that, too. Then the mystery led us to another different venue. Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt is the French writer which is the most studied and researched in the French lyceums today. He's been translated in 44 languages. And in September 2022, there was a period of time, 1 month. So during that break, he went to the Holy Land. We did our best, basically, to organize the trip. That was supposed also to be a pilgrimage that then turned into this work, into display. And then all roads eventually take to Rome. And so when he was on holiday, I said, well, why don't you come to Rome and why don't you tell the Pope what you experienced during the journey? That might be useful. So that was last November. And then the book was published in April and May, creating some havoc. Then in following September, it was published in Italy. And then we had Fazzini, a real genius of theater. And I asked him whether he was capable of taking something out of that. And he basically was so creative that he did really something marvelous with this play. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have a humble journalist calling a great writer. And the writer, while I imagine this writer sitting at his computer working on his latest play, so deeply immersed in his creative work, and he received this phone call. So this is a very committing, challenging task.
Da accettare. Perché?
Also a risky one. Why did you accept, Eric? And what was your thought when you received this call? So when I received the call, Lorenzo pronounced two very important words for me. He told me, "We like your faith and your freedom very much." I love my faith, my creed, but I equally like my freedom. So I said, well, the fact that someone is capable of showing this kind of esteem for me, well, that person certainly brings about wonderful news. So I said yes, a definite yes to this journey, not so much for the book, because I would have written a book only if the journey had given me the necessary matter in a way to write such a book. So I headed off for the Holy Land, and I experienced very rich moments, so surprising. I experienced things that really and literally changed my life. So clearly, I came back with a book. The previous book, the one that I had devoted to my spiritual faith, I mean, it took me 18 years to write that book. While I wrote this book immediately, because I understood that as soon as you receive, you have to return what you received immediately. And I had received so much from this journey that I immediately wanted to return all the emotions and the reflections and the experiences, the marvelous experiences I had lived with my book. I was not afraid of, in a way, compromising myself. Quite the opposite. I saw this as a gift. I was very afraid at the beginning of the journey. I was afraid that I could not feel anything, that I didn't have new thoughts, or the fear that the trip I was going to undertake was a useless one. But it was the opposite.
Lorenzo.
So I will forever be thankful towards Lorenzo for allowing me to live events that radically changed my life. I'm French. And probably because of I should always question religions and make fun of religions, because in France, we're quite skeptical. We follow Voltaire. And when I wrote the book, I thought that that was going to be very much criticized, but that was not at all the case.
Sincère, je dirais tellement.
That was probably because I was very innocent and naive and sincere when I wrote the book. I was, in a way, really naive. That everybody managed to recognize themselves in the book. I am someone who was born away of Christianity. However, I discovered Christianity afterwards. So I feel like the kind of the wild man of the 18th century who's about to discover the Western civilization. And I think that this enabled lay people to understand my pathway as well.
L'applauso è come...
So a big applause for you. As I happened to tell you when we last met in Bologna, I think it is not trivial at all to live this kind of experience. And equally, it is not trivial at all to neglect it and to take it seriously. And then to have the courage, as you did, to share this with everybody. I think this is certainly something for which it is really worth doing that. You had the courage to share with all of us what happened, and you did not neglect that. And this gave us the possibility to be here today and to produce this play. So as we said, there was a telephone call, there was a journey, and then there was an event during the journey, and that was the writing of the text. Then Lorenzo proposed this text to me. It was very, very interesting. We met in Bologna, and then Eric's bravery made it so that the play could be staged. So we kind of met again the following Christmas. We saw how the theatrical representation could look like, and after seeing that, we decided that that was a yes, that we wanted to move on. And from that, we then met Ettore in Milan. We had dinner, we had a meal together in Milan, and in a relatively short period of time, a great esteem, a mutual esteem for Ettore as an artist and as a human being was felt. So when I asked him to represent this text, he immediately accepted. I was very pleased of that, especially today, because I've seen the results. So my question to Ettore Bassi, who has played hundreds of different characters, what does it mean for you to stage a text of this that is normally not born, that was not created for the theatrical world? So the complexity was not only the theatrical representation of the text, but for Ettore, the fact of making this character so, in a way, normal, not at all a fake character. Well, that was an encounter for me as well. And I think that the key word here is hidden and also not hidden. And that's written in the cover of the book. The key word is challenge. The word challenge. The challenge I felt, because I felt that it truly was a challenge of mine. So after a first exchange of faith and exchange of trust, from this first meeting with Otello, with you, when we first met, when I perceived this strength and this willingness to tell the story. So the idea was to perceive that the meeting, and I think that here the great writer Eric Schmitt anticipated me. He talked about innocence. He talked about honesty and being naive. I mean, when I read the text, I immediately perceived that there was a very honest human pathway in the story, that the story basically did not, it was not drawing any institutional conclusion, so to say. But that was a spiritual internal pathway that was void of political or religious considerations. It was an interior pathway, and there was honesty and innocence and naivete. And that's very important for an actor to feel, because that's the same feeling that an actor has to feel whenever he faces an audience and a new text, a new performance. So this encounter of honesty made me feel that I was in the right place where I could express the best of what I could express, to, in a way, take everything that I could take from the intimacy of the author and that could be brought to an audience, to the audience watching a play. This was a very complex work from this point of view for an author. This is something that we were saying with Otello. The main difficulty consisted in the fact that we were going to, in a way, turn a personal experience like that of a journey into something that could be used on stage and enjoyed by an audience. So, emotions. Turning all of this into emotions, into 3D experience, into a 3D experience, into silence, for example. So the main challenge was precisely this. And I think that here lies the gift. You have the experience of those who write the text, but this experience is conveyed to those who perform it on stage. So the gift was given to me as an actor by the writer, and this is something that, as a human being, enriched me. It is undeniable that if you are on a stage to tell such a deep and profound story, that means that you have to commit yourself deeply, emotionally. And I have to confess that there are some moments during the play in which I can say that I might be very close to what Eric actually felt in certain moments during his writing. This is ultimately what my task is all about. So feeling this means that you are interiorizing this. And so the text after each performance has been able to donate me something more. It has helped me become a different person. So the challenge for me was to, in a way, come to a place in which I am more complete. I am I am whole as a human being. So thank you, and thank you.
E la sfida è andata avanti coinvolgendo.
Then the challenge went on. Other people have been involved. The theater center from Brescia, the Institute of San Miniato, where 7 performances went on stage, and then our musicians, who are really extraordinary, without whom all of this could have not been possible. So now the challenge goes on, and the idea is that anyone poses a question to whomever you want. I think that, this is the first time that we meet all together, so I assume that some questions have not yet been asked. So feel free to ask any question you may have. May I start? Because actually I've just finished answering the previous question, and there's another one coming to my mind. So we were talking about the challenge. So my question to Eric is the following. There is this challenge contained in the title. Has this challenge changed during the pathway? Going from the writing to the experience of the play in a theater, up to the interior pathway that you felt. And what kind of challenge is it today? How can you contextualize it at the end of this pathway? How can you frame this challenge? Where do you place it? Where does it stand today? Well, I talked about the challenge of Jerusalem. And when I talked about the challenge of Jerusalem, I referred to what I felt after a month spent in Jerusalem. My impression is that Jerusalem is a city in which God challenges us. God talked at least 3 times in the city of Jerusalem. He founded Judaism, Christianity, and he did very important things for the Muslims. I think that the first thing he said was to induce people to listen to him. Now I think that God wishes people to listen to themselves, to try and understand themselves. Jerusalem is a place that induces us to be brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, we're not up to that challenge. Human beings are killing each other. And when does this happen? This normally happens when brothers forget their common origin. They forget about their father. And I think we're going precisely through this kind of moment. We are forgetting our common origin, and yet Jerusalem is constantly reminding us of this common origin. So I think that here lies the challenge of Jerusalem. It's the challenge of being brotherly rather than being brothers who kill each other. And as a matter of fact, men are deaf to each other. So the very fact that we are staging this challenge induced me to actually make me feel marvelous moments. Normally, it is only when I write that I become brave. In life, I'm not that brave. And Ettore was on stage. And he personified me. So when talking Italian, I also managed to become beautiful. That's wonderful first good news. And I lost quite a few kilos. I think that if you want to induce people to study Italian all over the world, you should first show a photo of mine, the one before, and then a photo of myself with Ettore after the stage. And you will see that all over the world, the Italian institutes will be full of students. And as I could not understand all the words of the play in Italian, I decided to focus on emotions. The emotions raised by images, by the music. And the vibrating emotions that Ettore was conveying. So lots of emotions. So many emotions, and all together like I have never experienced before. When I write works for the stage, I normally try and keep a distance. I'm not one of the characters, but in fact, here I was indeed one of the characters. It was like, having a shock. And then during the night, I continued feeling the memories, remembering again the different moments of the play. I tried to interiorize the play as if I were a normal, so to say, spectator, and I really liked it a lot.
Sempre il maestro.
I have a question to Mr. Schmitt. in your books, there is a fil rouge in the gospel according to Pilatus. There is, I mean, that was published in the year 2000. Then it took you about 18 years to write them. And then there is this challenge to write the places. So again, back to the gospel according to Pilate. I've always thought about Jesus in the olive orchard, but actually in your mind, can he be represented in a different way? I mean, Otello made a stage on the challenge of Jerusalem, and I believe that from the Gospel according to Pilate, you can definitely come out of something. Well, actually, I candidate myself to be a player, to be a character in that stage as well. I have a scoop. In a year, a film will be made, a movie will be made, taken precisely from the Gospel according to Pilate. I have already produced 2 movies, Tout le monde, which is, and then also Oscar and the Lady in Pink. And then for years, producers all were constantly calling me, asking if I wanted to make yet another movie. My answer was always no, because I normally write something else. But then my first producer, with whom I've had a very good time, and who's also very fond of me, actually, he insisted. We had a meal together. And I said no, because I said to him, if I really had to make a movie, I would like to make a really important one. So for me, to come away from my desk, from my writing desk, well, I need to do something that is worth doing. And so my producer replied, what's important for you? And my response was the Gospel according to Pilate. And he accepted. So I'm really very, very happy.
Dans les Pouilles.
We're going to have a part of the movie be produced in Italy, in Apulia.
Yeah.
Well, Ettore, you can sign up if you like. Well, Puglia is my homeland. I'm already at home. You don't even pay for expenses to me. I'm already at home. Well, sometimes it's a chance when God wants to remain unseen. I have a question, or there is a question. Maybe there may be questions from the audience. Please be ready. I have a question for Otello. I would like to know why you added so much music to the theater performance. I think I know the answer, but I would like to hear it from you. Well, that was the shared desire for it to be a journey for the audience too, the possibility to share the emotions of a journey and all the feelings that are so well described in your book. In the intimate reading of a book, one can feel emotions, and in the theater, they have to be conveyed and shared in a way. So my desire was that through this show, it could be possible to live again that journey that you experienced geographically in the Holy Land, but also to live again that human journey that is so well described in the book. It's described so very well and in such a very important way, because you describe distance and all the preconceptions that people have on many ideas, on many themes. But then, in a very hard way sometimes, there is a process of getting closer, of convincing yourself. First, as you said, to abandon the Eric you used to be, and for a new Eric to open up. So that's for an inner journey that coincided with meeting a lot of people and visiting a lot of places, generated a lot of emotions in you. So the desire to put up a show and with music was to have emotions for the audience to be felt. First and foremost, feeling them through the reading with you, and then through music. We had a journey to Arabian countries, thanks to Myrna and her beautiful voice and her experience coming from Syria. Then we have the clarinet with the klezmer music, more Israeli style. And we have a whole sound environment, thanks to Matteo, that is helpful to get those very hard moments to emerge, like the encounter with a wall, where the cold, the distance, the gloomy aspects of that wall is there, not just through the visual content, but also through sound effects that were made by Matteo and through digital technologies. So all this is a whole of out of visual, sound, and life experience. When we live, that's what we have, and also the sound aspect is so dominant for us. And I think that for those who saw the performance, saw the show, this can be very helpful to get immersed into this journey.
Domanda mia a Ettore.
I have a question for Ettore. Have you already been to these places? And since you play his character, have you ever asked yourself if what happened to him may happen to anyone else? Well, yes, I've been to those places. I've been to Jerusalem many years ago. And I perceived exactly what we said before, that is, that sense of living together that was to be accepted and even embraced. At the same time, I could feel a strong, vibrant energy, a sort of suspended tension or underground tension. There is a moment in the show where Eric says, looking at this city for the first time, I wonder whether I admire it or I hate it. I'm struck. And then he says, the image of Jerusalem does not match its meaning. That is, the impact for those arriving to that place for the first time is really shocking. It's powerful in terms of harshness and not of comfort. So an inner process has to be started to understand which way wants to go once there. And I think that this can be done by anyone. Last night, I had this question asked by Otello about this show, this text, whether it can be for everybody, for and this connects to your question, it is for everybody, just like Jerusalem or this journey, which is a spiritual journey. And this is for everybody, absolutely. It is clear that one has to be well oriented and open, just like Eric demonstrated, to break one's own certainties and let the change permeate oneself and going towards the unknown.
Io volevo chiedere a
I would like to ask Otello something that I have never asked during the 2 months of work we have had together. For those of you who will be lucky enough to go to see this show, I think that it's already sold out, so try and check if you can make an effort and go to see the show tonight. The setting is really interesting and strong. And during the show, I don't see many things. They happen behind me. And many things are revealed by the audience. They tell me, why, you know, there was that thing or that other thing. I wanted to congratulate Otello because I haven't done it already because of the direction that he decided to adopt for the stage design, because it's a powerful, delicate, and brave direction. It was not easy to put all these aspects together. There's projections, music, lighting, the type of setting, the movements on the scene. There's many, many layers of communication and expression. So rather than a question, what I wanted to say is to say thank you for involving me in this project and to congratulate you really for your ability for having this vision and for the visual result of this show. Thank you so much. Well, I don't want to turn into a sentimental session. It's as if I came to you now and hugged you. In this respect, I think that when one is brave, then one is pushed to be even more brave. So many times I was asking my colleague, how can I set this on the scene? You know, this is a story of someone who is putting himself really at stake, telling what has happened to him. So there's no way that one can be cautious or can save on things. So the desire was to meet this courage that was demonstrated by Eric. And if possible, I would like to ask one more question to Eric, talking about braveness, courage. When you are asked to turn one of your novels into a theatrical play, whether the book was written for theater or not, and it is certain that in this case the book was not written for the stage. So I believe that the next step for you is even more complex and difficult, that is the courage to accept that choice and to say, yes, that's okay. You can put up a show. In my view, in my experience, I would be fearful that my writing, my text might be misinterpreted or or depreciated, and many shades might not be respected. All those shades that I know that I had put in many parts of the text. So where can you find this courage if you use that courage in that particular stage? It's very easy to answer this question. When I am asked to put up a theatrical play based on my books, I always say no. When I am asked to make a movie based on one of my works, in 99% of cases, I refuse. I say no. So it's really hard for me to have trust, because at the beginning of my career, I had been betrayed so many times in these adaptations. So I always talk to movie producers. I say I may give the rights of the novel, but then if I don't like the movie, at the beginning, there must be a notice. Freely betrayed the work by Eric Schmitt.
Et alors, c'est très pratique de demander ça parce
So this is a very practical request because they leave it immediately. I don't want to give the rights. I'm always ready to do it if I am with sincere people that are pushed really by the true desire of delivering what is present in my works. That is why I agreed to have a movie based on Monsieur Ibrahim with Amar Sharif, because I really loved all the movies by this director, and I knew that deep inside he was honest. And I also felt in that case that I had honest people next to me. And above all, this text is very intimate, is very personal. But at the end of the day, it is as if I didn't own it. It didn't belong to me, because I feel like a vector. I feel like a medium. I feel a sort of obligation to tell this story and to tell how a person who does not believe in God can fully adhere to Christianity. So this story goes beyond myself. I am the author, but I am also the actor, the interpreter. So it is up to me to convey this story. That is why I've had a particular relationship with this text, and seeing it performed on the stage has really impressed me.
Allora siamo doppiamente.
Well, we are truly honored that we can keep the notice from a text by. So that's very important for theater work. We have 13 questions. We have a microphone, so let's start from the first row. Please raise your hand, otherwise we can't see you. I have a question for Eric. You have immediately addressed the question with honest words. The alternative is between brotherhood and fratricidal. Maybe this reality is admired and hated at the same time. and there is always the risk of fratricide in brotherhood. And maybe the topic is also religious, because we forgot about the common father, and we have started a process leading to fratricide. And the skeptical people in France following Voltaire said that religion can lead to violence, it's a problem, so they can do it without it. But instead, maybe the other way is interesting, that is to get to the very end of faith. And so I refer here to the Gospel according to Pilate, and we got this wonderful news that a movie will be made out of it. And Julia, Pilate's wife, says to her husband, faith and the lack of belief are two faces of the same coin. Only indifference is atheistic. So the point is not this, it's not indifference. It was not the challenge of Jerusalem for you, winning the risk of falling into indifference. And before answering, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you. I want to mention this publicly because Eric-Emmanuel Schmitt collaborates with the newspaper Osservatore Romano. I am the editor-in-chief, and he writes a monthly piece, and I want to thank him. So be informed about this, that in the Osservatore Romano newspaper, we also have his writing. So the risk is really the indifference, isn't it? Yes, in the Gospel according to Pilate, Pilate's wife says that doubt and faith are indeed two faces of the same coin, two sides of the same coin, and it is only indifference that is atheistic. Indeed, I think that the big evil for men is indifference. Indifference towards religion, the question of God, or indifference with respect to other people's spirituality. For me, every person has God inside, and every person asks themselves the question of God. Then every individual may give a different answer, but everybody is moved by this question. We share it, and this is the first form of brotherhood to me, that is this kind of questioning. So my humanism is in sharing this question. After that, each of us can give a different answer, and these differences are what make us unique. And these differences, of course, make us different, but they must not divide us, and even less so to put us one against the other. So this sharing, to me, lies in this question. And an indifferent spirit, an indifferent mind towards this question is a dead mind, a dead spirit. So it is really the life of the spirit and the life of the mind that are animated by this question. Next question from the audience. I would like to ask a question to Eric. Do you think we can combine the word challenge with paradox? Paradox means that God reveals himself to man and is made present to man, and from evil something good can be obtained for the humanity. Well, I talk about this a lot in the book, The Challenge of Jerusalem. And specifically, the paradox itself is represented by Christianity. For example, with respect to all the other religions, I think that the most paradoxical religion is Christianity indeed. And I understand quite well why it is rejected many times, because it requires a thinking effort that is not present in other religions. Thinking that the eternal turns into temporal and that God turns into a man, and thinking that one dies but doesn't really die because then he resurrects 3 days after his death. So that's a challenge, that's a paradox for the mind. What I try to narrate in this tale of the journey to Jerusalem is that this mystery, which is the foundation of Christianity, is a mystery that I cannot understand, but I can feel. And that is what I tell about in the book. I had the feeling to feel the mystery in the Holy Sepulcher, really to feel the mystery, to sense it. But my intelligence always stumbles. And I believe that the interest in the mystery lies in this indeed. Mysteries must not be explained. Mysteries must be embraced. They have to be attended to. We have 5 more minutes, so short question for a short answer. We see a hand raised up there. I have a question for Mr. Schmitt. After this journey to Jerusalem, we can say that this journey was an inner journey too. I guess that a frequent question that has been asked you is, what is God to you? What would you answer? So the question is, this journey was also an inner journey. So what is the answer to the question, what is God to you? And before the journey, would you have given a different answer? Thank you for asking the question in French. For a couple of seconds, I believed that I was understanding Italian. After experiencing a mystical night in the desert, on that occasion, my experience of God was not linked to religion. It was a spiritual, not religious experience. It was a God of all religions. It was the absolute. It was the infinite. During my journey to Jerusalem, this God took on a religious dimension and absolutely and decidedly linked to Christianity. Because in Christianity, there is something that I couldn't feel in the first mystical experience in the desert of Sahara, and that is the notion of love. And my conversion to Christianity is through this concept of love.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Ettore. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Lorenzo. We hope we could contribute to this year's meeting topic. If we are not after the essence, then what are we after? Please enjoy the meeting, and thank you all for being here.
Stanno andando.
La civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite che io sia? E allora si è voltato improvvisamente alla gente che era lì e ha detto: la gente che cosa dice che io sia? Chi dice che io sia? E voi chi dite